Hey there and welcome to Food Love and Stiff Peaks. Today we're going to be making one of my favourite recipes, my extra indulgent deluxe chocolate fudge brownies. I thought this would be a great way to kick off my new channel with something simple, sweet and scrumptious. These brownies are great for last minute bake sales, having your friends over, or just brightening your spirits when you're a bit down in the dumps or you've had a rough day. If you want super fudgy and tasty brownies, simply follow this recipe and you will have the perfect results every time. To make our brownies, we're going to need the following: 250 grams of white caster sugar, 25 grams of a good quality cocoa, 100 grams of plain all-purpose flour, 200 grams of a good quality dark chocolate. Ideally you want between 75 and 85% cocoa solids. I went for 85% this time and my brownies were spot on. 125 grams of unsalted butter, but salted is fine if you prefer it. 2 large eggs. And finally a teaspoon of a good quality vanilla extract, but if you can't get hold of vanilla extract then essence will do fine. Some optional extras are 50 grams of diced up cream cookies. I went for the extra shaky variety to add a bit of crunch. 2 tablespoons of golden syrup. Now if you can't get hold of golden syrup, don't worry, that's not an issue. You can replace this with either liquid glucose or to a lesser extent honey. Ideally you wouldn't use honey as it will impact the overall taste, but I'm sure 2 tablespoons won't exactly ruin it. We're also going to require the following kitchen utensils: a microwavable dish to melt our chocolate and butter. You can use a bain-marie, but obviously you will require a pan for this. You're also going to require a good sized mixing bowl. Ideally a spatula if you have one available, but don't worry if you don't. Now you do have the option to either use a whisk or a hand mixer for this recipe. I'll be using the hand mixer, and that's only partially because I'm too lazy to use a whisk. We will need a baking tray. Ideally something like a 9x5 should be perfect, as you don't want the brownies too thick or they may not cook all the way through. You also want to try and use a relatively thin baking tray so the base cooks evenly. Optionally we can use greaseproof paper, or you could use butter, but greaseproof paper is much easier to remove and saves on the washing. Another optional extra is a cooling rack. This will simply aid the brownies to cool faster, but it's not necessary, so don't go out and buy one. Now before we get started, what we're going to need to do first is preheat our oven. Ideally we want it at around 180 degrees centigrade, or approximately 350 degrees Fahrenheit, or if you're using a gas oven, you want to have it on roughly gas mark 4. First we want to melt our chocolate and butter. So in our microwavable dish we add first the chocolate and then the diced butter. Now to melt our chocolate and butter, what we're going to need to do is we're going to need to cook the mixture in a microwave on full power for 30-second bursts until the butter is liquid and the chocolate has only just started to melt. You do want to take it out every 30 seconds or so just to swirl the bowl around to prevent the chocolate from burning. Our chocolate and butter mixture should look something like this. As you can see, the butter is completely melted, but the chocolate is still not quite there yet. So all we need to do is give this a quick stir and then just let the residual heat finish off melting the chocolate. So all you need to do is just put that aside for a few minutes. In our large mixing bowl we want to add our eggs and give them a quick beat up. As we're going for a fudgy consistency, we don't want to incorporate too much air, simply just beating eggs. I find if you do this, the mixture binds easier. The next step is to gradually add our sugar. Now you want to add the sugar a small bit at a time, just so it incorporates easier. If like me you discover that your hand mixer is actually blowing sugar just about everywhere, then you do actually want to lower your bowl to prevent your work surfaces from being covered in sugar. Once all your sugar is in, give it a good mix up and then we should be ready for our vanilla. Once the mixture is starting to look pale, it's time to add our vanilla extract. Again, you might want to watch out for your hand mixer trying to blow vanilla all over your counters as well. But once the vanilla is in, all we need to do is incorporate it and move on to our next step. The next thing we want to do is line our baking tray. Now obviously either at this point you could line it with parchment paper or baking paper, or you could choose to butter your tray. The only issue with buttering it is it's actually kind of difficult to actually get the brownie out unless you have cooked the base thoroughly through. Because if it, for instance, it's still a bit too fudgy on the bottom, it might be nigh impossible to get that thing out without having to scrape the bottom of the tray. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a piece of parchment paper, just a little bit bigger than the actual baking tray itself. Then we're going to scrunch it up 3 times into a smaller ball, and then after each time you scrunch it up you're going to release it. Now the reason we're doing this is actually makes the paper a lot more sort of malleable, so you can shape it a lot easier than rather than being a rigid piece of baking paper. So when you actually add the mixture to it, it should settle in the corners a lot easier. Once our sugar, eggs and vanilla are fully incorporated, we now want to add our chocolate and our butter to our mixture. By this time the chocolate should have almost completely melted. It doesn't matter if there's a couple of lumps still in the chocolate, it's fine, it'll cook down in the oven. It'll just add a nice little bit of extra chocolatey crunch or a little bit of a surprise to your mixture. Now you want to scrape the bowl down as much as possible. We really want to get as much of that chocolatey goodness into our mix as we can. You don't need to worry about being too delicate about it because this is a fudgy brownie, so unlike a cake, you don't have to worry about knocking the air out of the chocolate and pouring it down the side of the bowl. Just dump it on in there, it's going to be fine anyway. I'm going to share with you a little bit of a cleaning tip. Now I can imagine at this point a lot of you are screaming at your computer screen saying, "What are you doing? Why would you do that?" But you've got to remember in this bowl it's purely just chocolate and butter, and that's not a great taste. If it was a bit sweetened I could understand, but I wouldn't want to lick that bowl out at all. And the idea behind this is essentially if we're wiping all the chocolate and the butter out of the bowl, we're not eventually going to be pouring it down our sink, which could cause our sink to block. So that's just a little bit of a cleaning tip, and as you can see the bowl is actually quite nice and clean. Now we've added the chocolate and butter, we now need to whip this up. Now essentially what we're looking for is sort of like a dark, thick texture, as you will see shortly. Now our mixture is fully incorporated, we want to get in with our dry ingredients. So first things first, let's get our cocoa in, and then our flour. Now you may have noticed that I'm not sieving either of these, and the reason behind that is the electric hand mixer. Because we're using an electric hand mixer, it's very unlikely that our mixture is going to clump or leave lumps. But if you were using a whisk, then there is a chance this could happen, so I would advise that you sieve things through. Obviously you can sieve things through if you want with the electric hand mixer, it's up to you. Now we have our dry ingredients in, we want to incorporate this mixture all together. If, like me, you're using an electric hand mixer, you might want to turn off the electric hand mixer and incorporate this slowly by hand first. I can imagine people using a whisk are feeling a bit smug about themselves, but don't worry, we're going to get ahead shortly. Once you feel you're at a comfortable place with your mixture all kind of mixed in, you then want to turn your hand mixer back on, and this will avoid basically ending up in a storm of flour and cocoa. Once the mixture is fully combined, it should look something like this, and it's time to add our optional extras. Like I said, you don't have to add either of these, I just feel that they change the texture kind of substantially, because obviously you're going to get a lot of crunch from the cookie, and then you're going to add that extra level of fudginess from the golden syrup. Once again, you want to incorporate this until it's mixed all the way through. Once our mixture is fully combined, we now want to get it into the baking tray. So first things first, give it a quick mix and a scrape down with our spatula, and once you're happy with the consistency, which at this point is going to be really thick and goopy, this is going to be so fudgy, you just want to add it straight into the baking tray. Now you will have to scrape your bowl down quite a lot. Don't try and leave too many cheeky lumps in there so you can get a little bit of extra when you're licking the bowls out. Once you've got it into your baking tray, try and flatten it out as best you can. Give it a bit of a tap around. It's not going to help too much because the mixture is just so thick, but either way, once you roughly have it flattened out, you need to get it into your preheated oven and leave it to cook for approximately 18 to 20 minutes. You may want to take this opportunity to either clean or lick your utensils. I'll leave it up to the imagination what happened with mine. So your brownie mixture is ready. It should look something like this. Now you want to leave it to cool for approximately half an hour or so, just so the mixture all relaxes and becomes extra dense. If you want some warm brownies, you might want to dive in straight away, but the mixture might not have set up yet, so you might want to be a bit patient. Now you might be noticing the cheeky little hole in the top left hand corner there, and that might be because I had a little bit of a sample, or I'm just going to use the excuse, I was just making sure that it was cooked all the way through. Yeah, that's it. I wasn't having any cheeky little samples. Either way, you may have also noticed that the entire brownie is actually deflated now. This is common and this will happen, so don't panic, don't worry, that's what's supposed to happen. Now with the brownie deflating, what it's going to do is basically make everything a lot more dense and fudgy, so don't take it as a bad thing at all. See, as you can see, with the greaseproof paper I was able just to remove it in one easy go without any hassle, and the pan remained clean. Obviously I did give it a little bit of a clean down after, just to make sure there was no excess butter on it or anything. Now all that we need to do now is just slice it up, so take a nice clean knife, and I like to cut into small little brownie sized bites, just so you get a nice delicious little sort of snack rather than quite a rich sort of dense sort of dessert, shall we say. Now if you want clean cuts, what you have to do after each cut is essentially just clean down your knife like so, and then you get a nice clean incision. I did feel like it was a bit of a waste every time I cleaned off the knife, because I really just wanted to lick the knife, but I keep my knives kind of sharp, so licking that knife is kind of a bad idea. So that's my advice for today: don't lick really sharp knives, unless you don't really want a tongue, in which case feel free. But no, seriously, don't ever lick knives, that's really dangerous. Now once we have sliced it one way, we need to give it a quick turn and slice it the other way. Now I'm only going to do a quick slice along this side just to give you an idea of what the brownie is like, and believe you me, oh, it was absolutely delicious. I'm just gonna try and precariously balance the knife until I find a safe place to put it. I'm going to take the little corner slice there. Now the camera was slightly out of focus here, but you might not be able to see that well. That is just a gooey texture. As you can see, it just sort of crumbles apart. And a little taste test. It was absolutely delicious. Even got my seal of approval. But I'm not really a picky eater, so you got to try this thing for yourself. I did actually take this pan of brownies to work, and trust me, they absolutely loved them. I was going to go in for another little sneaky bite, but I thought best not. And there we have our deluxe chocolate fudge brownies. I've been James, this is Food Love and Stiff Peaks. If you do have any comments or suggestions, feel free to leave them below. If you could like, subscribe or share, it would be much appreciated. But until next time, I shall catch you later, and happy baking!